You wake up with a plan. You tell yourself, today I'll finally get it done. But hours later, you're scrolling, daydreaming, or finding small excuses to delay. Then comes the guilt. You whisper to yourself, maybe I'm just lazy. But what if I told you you are not lazy at all? What if I told you that procrastination is not a weakness, but a pattern carved into your brain, a pattern you can rewire? Most people never hear this. They believe procrastination is about willpower, discipline, or character. But science shows otherwise. Deep inside your brain, two forces are at war. One part pushes you to act, to create, to grow. The other pulls you toward comfort, distraction, and escape. This silent battle is not about laziness. It's about wiring. And if wiring is the problem, then rewiring is the solution. In this video, you're going to discover how procrastination forms inside the brain, and more importantly, how you can break it. We'll explore powerful insights from neuroscience, but also dive into the teachings of a man who dedicated his life to studying human consciousness. Jacobo Grinberg. His work was silenced, hidden, and almost forgotten after his mysterious disappearance. Yet within his writings, there are clues that reveal not only how we perceive reality, but how we can shift our mental habits, including procrastination, from the inside out. Stay with me, because what you'll hear today is not the typical advice of make a to-do list or just push harder. This is about changing the very structure of your mind. It's about uncovering why you delay, why you resist, and how awareness itself can cut the chains of procrastination. If you watch till the end, you'll walk away with practical steps that can rewire your brain, but also a new understanding of your own consciousness. So let's start with a simple truth. Procrastination is not a moral flaw. It is your brain seeking relief from discomfort. When a task feels boring, overwhelming, or scary, the brain lights up the same circuits as it does when you face a threat. To protect you, it whispers, "Not now, later." And every time you obey, those circuits grow stronger. You reinforce the habit of avoidance. That is why it feels so automatic. It's not you, it's the pathways you've built. But here is where Jacobo Grinberg's work becomes fascinating. He believed that the brain is not a closed machine. According to his Syntergic theory, the brain interacts with a wider field of consciousness. What you think, what you feel, what you intend, it all connects to a greater network. In his view, reality is not only what you see with your eyes, but also what your mind projects and shapes through attention. And this is where procrastination hides its deeper secret. When you delay action, you are not only stopping your work, you are shaping your perception of reality itself. You are telling your mind, this task is dangerous, this task is heavy, this task is not for me. The field responds. Your perception narrows. You see the task as even harder, even more impossible, and so the cycle repeats. But when you shift your awareness, when you step into observation and intention, you break the loop. You begin to rewire. Now imagine for a moment, what if procrastination was actually a signal, not an enemy? What if it's the mind's way of showing you where fear lives, where doubt hides, and where your inner field is clouded? This is the hidden gift of Grinberg's perspective. By becoming conscious of procrastination in the very moment it appears, you awaken, you turn what once felt like weakness into the doorway of transformation. This is not common knowledge. It's not in the productivity books or motivational slogans. It's the missing piece most people never see. But by the end of this video, you'll learn how to use awareness, small actions, and intention to shift your inner wiring. You'll understand how your brain builds habits and how your consciousness, according to Grinberg, connects with a larger field that supports or resists your actions. And you'll see that procrastination was never proof that you are lazy. It was proof that you are powerful enough to change. So stay with me. The steps we'll explore may feel simple, but they carry deep weight, because when you rewire your brain, you don't just stop procrastinating, you reshape your reality. And when you reshape reality, you step into the life that has been waiting for you all along. Welcome to Awakened Synchronicity. If you're ready to break free from procrastination and awaken to your forgotten power, make sure you subscribe and join us on this journey. Before we talk about how to stop procrastination, we need to understand what it really is. Most people think procrastination means laziness, a lack of drive, or even a weakness in character. But that idea is not only wrong, it is harmful. Procrastination is not laziness. It is a biological conflict happening inside your brain. At the center of this conflict are two powerful systems. On one side, you have the limbic system. This is the ancient part of your brain, designed for survival. It cares about comfort, safety, and avoiding pain. It's fast, emotional, and always searching for the easiest way out. On the other side, you have the prefrontal cortex. This is the newer part of your brain, sitting just behind your forehead. It handles planning, decision-making, long-term goals, and self-control. It's slower, but it's logical, visionary, and focused on the future. When you face a task, especially one that feels boring, difficult, or uncertain, these two parts collide. The limbic system screams danger, discomfort ahead, let's escape. The prefrontal cortex whispers, stay with it. This matters for the future. This tug of war is the true face of procrastination. And often the limbic system wins because it is older, louder, and deeply tied to emotion. Dr. Rebecca Heiss, a biologist who studies stress and human behavior, explains it clearly. She says that procrastination is the brain's attempt to protect you. When a task feels overwhelming, your brain interprets it almost like a threat. The limbic system then pushes you toward quick rewards, scrolling, eating, checking your phone, because those actions reduce the stress in the moment. You don't avoid the task because you are lazy. You avoid it because your brain is wired to reduce immediate pain, even if it hurts you later. Research published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences supports this. Studies show that procrastination is linked to increased activity in the amygdala, the part of the limbic system that processes fear and stress. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex shows less control when the amygdala takes over. This means that procrastination is not a lack of effort, but a shift in which brain system is running the show. The more powerful your emotional reaction, the weaker your logical planning becomes. Another article in PMC PubMed Central goes even further. It shows that chronic procrastination changes the way the brain functions over time. Each time you choose avoidance, the brain releases a small dose of relief. That relief acts like a reward. And what does the brain do with rewards? It learns. It builds pathways that say, when I face discomfort, avoiding it feels good. These pathways strengthen with repetition. This is called neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to rewire itself based on experience. In other words, the more you procrastinate, the better your brain becomes at procrastinating. Think about that for a moment. Every time you delay, you are teaching your brain that avoidance is the answer. You are building a reflex. That is why procrastination can feel automatic, almost like a habit you can't control. Your brain is not failing you. It is doing exactly what you have trained it to do. But here's something fascinating. Jacobo Grinberg, the Mexican psychologist and neuroscientist, described consciousness as a field where perception and intention interact. According to his Syntergic theory, what we call reality is not fixed. It is constructed by the brain's interaction with this wider field. If that is true, then procrastination is not only a neural habit, it is also a distortion in how we create our experience of time and tasks. When the limbic system dominates, reality feels urgent and threatening. The task looks larger, heavier, more painful than it really is. Your perception bends under the weight of fear. The prefrontal cortex, which could hold the bigger picture, gets silenced. You are not seeing reality, you are seeing a version of it, shaped by fear. This is why Jacobo's work is so relevant. He taught that by shifting awareness, by observing your own perception, you can change the way reality appears. That means you can also change the way a task feels. Science and Grinberg's ideas meet here. On the scientific side, procrastination is reinforcement of avoidance pathways in the brain. On the consciousness side, procrastination is the field showing you a reality of discomfort that may not even be true. Together, they explain why so many people feel stuck. They are not lazy. They are trapped in a cycle created by wiring and perception. So when you find yourself delaying, it is not proof that you lack willpower. It is proof that your brain is protecting you the only way it knows. It is the limbic system taking the driver's seat, while the prefrontal cortex waits in the back. And unless you interrupt the pattern, the cycle repeats and deepens. This is the real story of procrastination. A brain in conflict, a habit reinforced by reward, a perception shaped by fear, and an opportunity. Because what has been wired can also be rewired. Jacobo Grinberg was not the kind of scientist who stayed inside the safe walls of traditional psychology. He was a visionary. Born in Mexico City in 1946, he trained as a psychologist at the National Autonomous University of Mexico and later studied psychophysiology at the Brain Research Institute in New York. But unlike most researchers of his time, Grinberg was not satisfied with the narrow explanations that reduced human experience to neurons firing in the brain. He believed that consciousness itself was the great mystery waiting to be explored. And so, for decades, he dedicated his life to the study of consciousness, perception, meditation, and the intersection of science with ancient spiritual traditions. His work was unconventional. He interviewed shamans, yogis, healers, and spiritual masters, searching for the links between altered states of consciousness and the brain's mechanisms. He published more than 50 books, many of them exploring the hidden potentials of the human mind. But his most important contribution was the Syntergic theory, a bold idea that the brain is not just a machine processing signals from the outside world. It is also a receiver and interpreter of a broader field of consciousness. According to this theory, reality is not only out there waiting to be perceived. Instead, reality emerges from the interaction between this field and the brain's activity. Imagine perception as a meeting point. On one side, there is the vast field of consciousness, unlimited and full of possibilities. On the other, there is the brain, with its unique wiring, memories, and structures. When they meet, the result is what we call our reality. This means that reality is not fixed. It is flexible, shaped by attention, intention, and awareness. And this is where Grinberg's teachings connect deeply with the problem of procrastination. If reality is shaped by the way our brain interacts with consciousness, then procrastination is not simply a bad habit, it is a distortion in the way we construct reality. When we see a task as impossible and it feels too heavy to start, we are not seeing truth. We are seeing a version of reality filtered through fear, avoidance, and habit. Grinberg believed that by becoming aware of these filters, we can change not only our perception, but also our behavior. This idea blends perfectly with modern neuroscience. Today we know that the brain is constantly changing. This is called neuroplasticity. Each thought, action, and choice creates or strengthens connections between neurons. The more often you repeat a behavior, the stronger the pathway becomes, almost like carving a trail through a forest. Over time, the trail becomes easier to follow, until it feels automatic. Procrastination is built this way. When you avoid a difficult task, your brain gives you a reward. It reduces the stress you felt and replaces it with relief. That relief is powerful because it activates your brain's reward system, releasing dopamine. The next time you face a similar task, your brain remembers avoidance feels good. So without thinking, you repeat the pattern. The more you do it, the deeper the pathways become. Research in PMC confirms that procrastination is reinforced by this cycle of avoidance and relief. Over time, it can rewire your brain to prefer short-term comfort over long-term goals. Insight psychology also describes how this cycle links to instant gratification. The brain is wired to prefer immediate rewards. Checking your phone, eating a snack, or scrolling through social media gives a quick hit of dopamine. These activities are easier and more rewarding in the short term than facing an uncomfortable task. The problem is, this constant chase for instant pleasure strengthens the neural circuits of procrastination. What begins as a single choice becomes a habit, and what becomes a habit eventually shapes your identity. But here is where Jacobo Grinberg's perspective changes everything. He would say that procrastination is not just neurons and chemicals, it is also consciousness losing itself in patterns. According to the Syntergic theory, when we avoid tasks, we collapse our perception into a narrow reality dominated by fear and resistance. Awareness is the key to breaking this collapse. By observing your own mind, by seeing procrastination as it happens, you can begin to weaken the cycle. The first step is to identify your triggers. Procrastination does not appear from nowhere. It is often triggered by emotional states, fear of failure, shame, self-doubt. It can also be triggered by the nature of the task, boring, overwhelming, or unclear. And of course, the environment plays its role. Distractions, noise, or easy access to entertainment. Each trigger sets off the limbic system, which pushes you toward escape. Grinberg's teachings offer a way to sense these triggers with greater clarity. He often wrote about the power of self-observation, consciousness watching itself. Instead of blindly reacting, you pause and notice, I feel resistance here. I feel the urge to escape. That simple act of noticing breaks the automatic chain. It opens a space between stimulus and response, and in that space, a new choice can emerge. For example, imagine sitting down to work on a report. Suddenly you feel restless. You want to check your phone. Normally you would obey the urge. But with awareness you pause and observe. This is the resistance. This is my trigger. You don't judge it, and you don't run from it. You simply see it. That awareness alone begins to weaken the grip of the old pattern. This leads us into awareness and mindfulness as the first step. Mindfulness is not complicated. It is the practice of observing thoughts, emotions, and sensations without judgment. When you sit with your resistance, you take away its power. You are teaching your brain that discomfort does not have to equal avoidance. A study published in Real Simple describes how mindfulness can disrupt the avoidance relief loop. By reducing the emotional charge of discomfort, mindfulness gives the prefrontal cortex more control. Jacobo Grinberg would call this the consciousness observing itself. He believed that when awareness turns inward, the brain-field interaction changes. New patterns of perception emerge, and once perception shifts, behavior follows. Of course, awareness alone is not enough. The next step is small actions, tiny habits. One of the biggest reasons we procrastinate is that tasks feel too large. The brain interprets them as threats, but when you break a task into very small steps, the threat disappears. Instead of write a book, you simply write one sentence. Instead of finish the project, you just open the file. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency of the brain to keep working on tasks. Once they are started, beginning creates tension. That tension pushes you forward, even when motivation is low. By starting small, you trick your brain into movement. Over time, these small actions build consistency, and consistency rewires the brain. But Grinberg would say that each small act of intention changes the field. Each moment you choose action over avoidance, you are reshaping your reality. You are showing your consciousness that the task is not dangerous, that it can be faced, and that progress is possible. Over time, these small acts accumulate into a new identity. You no longer see yourself as someone who procrastinates. You see yourself as someone who moves, who acts, who creates. This is how science and consciousness meet. Neuroscience explains the wiring. Avoidance creates habits. Habits create identity. Grinberg explains the field. Perception shapes reality. Awareness reshapes perception. Together, they reveal a path out of procrastination, not through force, not through guilt, but through understanding, awareness, and small steps that rewire the brain and open the mind to a new way of being. Rewiring the brain is not an event, it is a process. It does not happen in a single moment of clarity, but through repetition, design, and conscious intention. Every time you act differently, you teach your brain a new path. Every time you repeat the act, you make that path stronger. Over weeks and months, what once felt unnatural begins to feel automatic. This is the power of neuroplasticity in action, and it is also the heart of Jacobo Grinberg's insights about consciousness. Change is not only possible, it is inevitable when intention is sustained. One of the most practical ways to help this process is through environment design. The space around you shapes your mind more than you realize. If your desk is filled with distractions, your brain has to fight extra battles. If your phone buzzes every few minutes, the limbic system seizes the chance for instant gratification. The simplest step toward rewiring is to reduce friction. A clean desk, a quiet room, a closed door. These are not small details, they are signals to the brain that the task in front of you matters. By reducing distractions, you reduce the power of temptation. Environment design is not only about removing obstacles, but also about adding cues, prompts or triggers in your space. Tell your brain when and where to act. For example, setting a notebook on your desk the night before can be a silent invitation to begin writing in the morning. Working in the same location every day teaches your brain that this place means focus. Using time as a cue is equally powerful. If you dedicate the same hour each day to deep work, the brain begins to expect it, almost like a ritual. Over time, your environment becomes an ally, not an enemy. Yet even with the right environment, the brain needs reinforcement. That is why rewarding small wins is essential. Each time you complete a step, no matter how small, you should give yourself immediate, positive feedback. This could be as simple as checking off a task, taking a short break, or saying to yourself, "I did it." The brain thrives on rewards. They release dopamine, the same chemical that makes procrastination tempting. By rewarding action instead of avoidance, you train your brain to seek progress. The difference between getting stuck and building momentum often lies in whether you celebrate the first step or ignore it. But rewiring does not only depend on repetition and reward. According to Jacobo Grinberg, the brain is never working in isolation. It is interacting with a broader field of consciousness, what he called the Syntergic field. This field is not limited by neurons or synapses. It is influenced by awareness, attention, and intention. In this view, your mind is not a closed system. Every thought and action connects to a larger reality that shapes perception itself. This idea changes the way we approach procrastination. If the brain is linked to a field, then intention matters. It is not enough to force yourself into tasks. You must also align with meaning. Before beginning, pause and visualize why this task matters. Connect it to your larger purpose. Feel how completing it serves not only you, but also the reality you are shaping. This is more than motivation. It is a shift in perception. When the task is connected to meaning, the resistance weakens. The field aligns with your action. Visualization and intention setting are simple yet profound tools. Picture yourself completing the task. Imagine the relief, the growth, the freedom that follows. Speak your intention clearly, even if only to yourself. I choose to move forward. These practices do more than inspire. They reshape the interaction between your brain and the field. Belief, intention, and focus become forces that rewire not just behavior, but the structure of perception itself. In Grinberg's terms, you are not only acting inside the brain, you are acting within the fabric of reality. Of course, the journey of rewiring is not smooth. The old wiring of procrastination will resist change. This is natural. The brain prefers familiar patterns, even if they harm you. You will feel the pull of old habits, the temptation to delay, the voice that says, "Start tomorrow." This resistance is not failure. It is proof that change is happening. To handle setbacks, you must bring compassion into the process. Harsh self-criticism only strengthens the cycle of avoidance. Instead, treat yourself like a learner. When a child stumbles, we do not shout at them, we encourage them to try again. The same is true for your brain. Each setback is a chance to learn what triggered the avoidance. Was it fear? Was it boredom? Was it distraction? Reflect on it, adjust, and continue. Persistence, not perfection, rewires the brain. Sometimes a strategy will not work, and that is fine. Adjust. If working in silence feels impossible, try background music. If mornings are full of resistance, experiment with afternoons. Flexibility is not weakness, it is wisdom. Grinberg's teachings remind us that perception is not fixed. When one path closes, another can open, if awareness is present. Reflection is a vital part of this process. By noticing what triggers procrastination, you make the unconscious conscious. Each observation weakens the automatic loop. For example, if you notice that you always delay when a task feels vague, you can respond by clarifying it, break it down, write the first step, remove the fog. Awareness gives you choices where before there was only reaction. The final stage of rewiring is integration. To build a new normal, you must reinforce the changes daily. Small rituals help anchor the new pathways. Meditation each morning clears the mind and strengthens awareness. Short intention practices before tasks remind you of meaning and align you with the field. Reviewing progress at the end of the day reinforces success and teaches the brain that action matters. These rituals are not only habits, they are signals to the brain and field that you are living differently. Tracking your actions deepens this effect. Journaling what you did, how you felt, and what worked creates a record of growth. It also highlights patterns you may not notice in the moment. Perhaps you see that you work best in 2-hour blocks, or that certain triggers repeat. This knowledge makes the rewiring more precise. It turns change into a conscious process, not a vague hope. Accountability is another layer of integration. Sharing your goals with a friend, joining a group, or even setting reminders creates external structures that support the internal rewiring. The brain is social. It responds to connection and expectation. When others know your path, you are more likely to stay on it. Accountability does not replace self-discipline, it strengthens it. All of these practices, environment design, repetition, rewards, intention, compassion, reflection, rituals, and accountability, work together to create a new identity. Each day, you teach your brain that action is safe, progress is rewarding, and meaning is present. Each day, you shape the interaction between your brain and the field of consciousness. And though resistance appears, it no longer defines you. Through awareness and repetition, the old pathways weaken and the new ones take root. This is the art of rewiring. Not a battle against laziness, but a dialogue between brain and field, between habit and awareness. It is the slow, steady construction of a new reality, one where procrastination no longer rules, and where intention shapes the path forward. You are not lazy. If there is one truth I want you to carry from this journey, it is that procrastination does not define your worth or your potential. What you have seen in this video is that procrastination is not a weakness of character, but the result of how your brain has been wired through habits, patterns and the pull of immediate comfort. Science shows us that the brain constantly rewires itself. Neuroplasticity ensures that every choice you make leaves a trace. Jacobo Grinberg's teachings remind us that consciousness itself is not separate from reality. Your awareness shapes the field in which you live. This means that even the smallest shift you choose today can ripple out into powerful change tomorrow. Think back to the insights we've explored together. The conflict inside your brain is not laziness, but the tug of war between the limbic system craving relief and the prefrontal cortex aiming for growth. Chronic procrastination strengthens the pathways of avoidance, but equally, consistent small actions strengthen the pathways of discipline, focus, and presence. Jacobo Grinberg's vision shows us that rewiring is not just about neurons firing, it is about aligning your awareness with a larger field of intention. This is why even a 5-minute start, even a breath of mindfulness before a task, becomes more than a small act. It is a signal to your brain and to the field of consciousness itself that you are choosing growth over resistance. You now hold a key. You've seen that identifying your triggers, designing your environment, practicing mindfulness, and breaking tasks into smaller steps are not just productivity hacks, they are ways to reshape your brain's wiring. And when you add intention, when you say to yourself, "I choose this moment," you are echoing Grinberg's understanding that reality itself responds to the quality of your awareness. You are building a new self, not by force, but by conscious design. So here is my encouragement for you. Don't wait for tomorrow, don't wait for the perfect mood or the ideal conditions. Take one of these techniques and apply it today. Maybe it's as simple as setting a timer for 5 minutes and starting a task you've been avoiding. Maybe it's pausing to breathe and noticing the exact moment resistance rises in you. Maybe it's writing down one clear intention for the next hour. Whatever you choose, know that this act is not small. It is a seed of a new wiring in your brain and a new relationship with your own consciousness. And as you continue, expect resistance. The old wiring will pull you back, but that is not failure. That is the brain doing what it has been trained to do. With persistence, compassion, and awareness, the old patterns weaken and the new ones grow strong. Grinberg's message tells us, you are not just rewiring habits, you are awakening to the power you already carry. If this message has sparked something in you, I invite you to commit right now. Pick one action, no matter how small, and carry it out today. Then come back and share your experience in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else who is struggling with the same battle. And before you go, if you found value here, if you feel ready to rewire your brain and awaken to your deeper potential, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Awaken Synchronicity. This channel is here to guide you with the teachings of Jacobo Grinberg and the science of the mind, so you never walk this path alone. Together, we are not just breaking procrastination, we are building a life of awareness, presence, and power. Now the choice is in your hands. Will you let old wiring run your life? Or will you take one small step today to rewire your reality? The field is waiting for your intention.